My 10-year-old son came home from school the other day with a concerning report from the political front lines of his fourth-grade classroom. He told me that nearly all his classmates have already formed a firm, unified opinion on the nation's leaders. The current prime minister, he explained, is definitely the good guy.
Oh, dear.
The leader of the opposition, however, is clearly the bad guy. Naturally, I was curious. Okay, I asked why. What's their reasoning?
Yeah.
It wasn't about policy. It wasn't about the economy. It wasn't about something they'd seen on the news. The sole reason the opposition leader was the bad guy, my son reported, was because he's bald.
Bald. That's it.
That's it. And it was the same for the U.S. election. One guy's good because he seems nice and likes ice cream. This isn't just kids being silly. It's something else. It's a perfect, unfiltered window into a household's dinner table conversation, or lack thereof. It's the sound of an entire generation of parental indifference echoing out of the mouths of their children. Okay, let's unpack this. That anecdote, I mean, it sounds funny maybe, but it's actually quite stark and honestly a little alarming. It really shows something bigger, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's a snapshot, isn't it? A window into how kids are, forming their understanding of the world, especially politics, which is, well, it's messy.
Exactly. So today, we're going to really dig into this, try and understand the roots of it all. We'll look at how parental engagement, or maybe more importantly, the lack of it, shapes a child's civic understanding, their ability to think critically.
Especially now in, modern Western democracies.
Right. And then there's the whole digital media landscape. It's constantly changing. It's kind of chaotic. And it obviously has a huge effect on public awareness, particularly for younger people.
A massive effect.
And finally, we'll look at how governments are trying to keep up, their communication strategies, and this rise of what some people call safetyism legislation. This global push to regulate online stuff for safety.
Which has its own set of complications, balancing safety with things like free speech or just letting people explore ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And all of this stuff, it impacts public trust, governmental accountability, the whole works.
And what's really fascinating, and what I think we'll really get into today, is how interconnected all these things are. They aren't separate issues at all.
Right.
It's more like a web, a really complex web of influences that leads to what you heard from your son. These views that seem, on the surface, quite simplistic. Yeah. So we'll look at three main areas. First, that direct influence of parenting, right?
Yeah.
On civic understanding, critical thinking. Second, the whole digital media environment, its impact. And third, the role of government transparency, accountability in this digital age.
And how each layer affects the others. Because it really does seem like that's the key. It's not just kids being kids.
Not at all. It goes much deeper.
So let's circle back to my son's classroom. That report card, based on baldness and ice cream, it really does highlight that lack of dinner table conversation. It's not just about kids not knowing specific policies, right? It feels like maybe some fundamental building blocks are missing from how they learn to engage with the world. How crucial really is that parental involvement? Is it the bedrock?
Oh, it absolutely is. It's foundational. There's some really compelling research on this. One major study followed 365 two-parent families for, over a decade.
Wow, it's a long time.
Yeah, from infancy right up to 5th grade, around age 10. And they watched very carefully the parents' beliefs and their actual behaviors.
Yeah.
They looked at what they called democratic parenting beliefs, which basically means, believing in fostering a child's autonomy, respecting their differences, their individuality.
So not just top-down parenting.
Exactly. And alongside that, they observed sensitive parenting behavior. So how responsive were the parents? Did they show positive regard? Did they respect the child's autonomy in practice?
Right, the actions matching the philosophy.
Precisely. And what they found was really powerful. There's this reciprocal relationship. A parent's beliefs, like if they truly believe in fostering independence, strongly predicted changes in their actual parenting behavior over time.
So your beliefs guide your actions. Makes
A very strong link, yeah. Your convictions really seem to shape how you act as a parent. But here's the other interesting part. The reverse was also true, although maybe a little weaker. Parenting behavior also predicted changes in parenting beliefs.
Wait, so if I just started acting more responsive, even if I wasn't totally convinced at first, I might actually start believing in it more.
That's exactly what the evidence suggests. It's like cognitive consistency, right? You start acting a certain way, maybe allowing more choice, listening more, and then your beliefs kind of catch up to justify your actions. You think, hey, this actually works. And your belief in that approach gets stronger.
That's really subtle. It's not just a one-way street from belief to action. It's a feedback loop.
A dynamic system, exactly. And you mentioned it was a two-parent study. That adds another layer, right? The co-parenting effect.
Yes, and that was significant too. The study showed that both parenting behavior and those democratic beliefs had reciprocal effects between the spouses over time.
So parents influence each other's parenting styles.
They do. It might seem like small influences day to day, but over years it adds up. It can be substantial. So if one parent starts, say, being more sensitive, encouraging more independent thought, the research suggests it can create this positive ripple effect. It can gently nudge the other parent to improve their practices too. It's actually quite hopeful, isn't it? It means change in one person can lift the whole family unit.
It does offer hope for interventions, yeah. It suggests that trying to improve parenting really works best if you target both parents in a two-parent family. You get more bang for your buck, basically.
Right.
But there's always a but, isn't there? The study also found something more challenging. If a child showed externalizing behavior problems, defiance, aggression, not cooperating, that could actually predict less sensitivity from both the mother and the father over time.
Oh, so it creates a negative feedback loop. The child acts out, the parents become less sensitive, which probably doesn't help the acting out.
Exactly. It's a really difficult cycle to break. The child's behavior might inadvertently push away the very kind of parenting they need most.
Wow. Okay, so let's connect this back. For you, the listener, thinking about that fourth grader judging leaders on their hair, this research really points to something foundational being missing, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
It's not just that they haven't discussed specific policies. It's a deeper lack of exposure to, nuanced thinking, critical evaluation skills, the kind of skills that are usually, and probably most effectively, nurtured right there in the family, starting really early.
And what's fascinating is it's not just about what parents explicitly say about politics. It's about how they model engagement, how they model critical thinking, respect for different viewpoints, even from a young age.
Yeah. So if kids aren't learning to weigh different ideas or to think for themselves at home, they're just not equipped when they face the complexities. And let's be real, the sometimes sheer absurdity of the political world.
Exactly. They haven't built those mental muscles, which raises a really important practical point. Interventions need to involve both parents, ideally, and they need to address both the beliefs about good parenting and the practical skills, the execution.
Makes sense.
And maybe, on a wider level, it makes you think, should young people be more aware of this? How much partners influence each other's parenting long term? It might even, subtly inform who they choose as a partner later on.
That's a big thought. Choosing a partner isn't just about romance. It's about choosing who will co-shape your children's entire way of engaging with the world, including civics.
It really is. It's a decision with these long, echoing civic consequences.
Okay, that really grounds the importance of the home environment. But let's zoom out now. From the dinner table to, the digital chaos out there. Because even with fantastic parenting, kids today are swimming in a media ocean unlike anything before. How does that environment shape how different generations consume politics?
Oh, the shift is just monumental. And you see these really distinct patterns across generations. Let's start with the baby boomers, born roughly 46 to 64.
Okay.
Many in that group, they often rely almost solely on mainstream TV news, the evening broadcast. There's generally a higher level of trust in government, in established experts.
Right, the traditional authorities.
Yeah. And often, once they form a political opinion, it's quite sticky. Hard to change, even with good evidence to the contrary. They tend to be a bit more resistant to big shifts, preferring stability. Their info came from fewer, more curated sources.
A more contained information world, perhaps.
You could say that. Now, jump forward to Gen Z, born around 97 to 2012. They are, without a doubt, the social media generation.
TikTok, Instagram?
Exactly. Short-form video, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Reels. It's this constant rapid-fire stream, which maybe ironically seems to cultivate shorter attention spans, makes it harder to really dig into complex stuff.
And the choice is overwhelming. But does that mean better information?
Not necessarily. It often leads to echo chambers. They have so much choice, but they often gravitate to content that just confirms what they already think or what's entertaining or emotionally charged, rather than something that challenges them or gives deep context.
Yeah, the algorithm feeds you more of what you click on?
Precisely. And they're incredibly susceptible to biases, to conditioning from this online content, especially when it's packaged in these really emotional or visually grabbing ways. There's actually data showing real mental, even physical harm linked to this intense, often unfiltered online life for some Gen Z individuals.
That's worrying.
And their political views, often described as wildly polarized, exaggerated, almost absurdly so. We've all seen those TikToks, right? Extreme emotional reactions to elections, crying, shouting, but often they know literally nothing, as one source put it, about the actual politics or policies involved.
It's more about the performance of outrage.
It can seem that way, a performance of engagement fueled by spectacle rather than informed understanding.
Okay, that's Gen Z. What about the next ones? The Alpha generation, born after 2012. They're still kids, but what are the early signs?
Well, it's early, like you say, but there's a real concern, a risk of what some are calling a massive social problem if they just get immersed in the, quote, shady depths of the internet, those less moderated spaces without strong real-world education, without critical thinking skills being built up.
Shady depths, that's ominous.
It is. The comparison being made, and it's quite chilling, is to Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Remember Soma, the drug that kept everyone happy and distracted?
Yeah, blissful ignorance.
Well, the argument is that social media, online gaming, with the constant dopamine hits, the infinite scroll, the algorithms feeding you exactly what keeps you hooked, that's becoming our modern-day Soma. It provides constant reward, constant distraction from reality, and actively discourages deep thought or engaging with complex issues.
So a generation entertained into apathy. Or maybe entertained into adopting simplistic views.
Potentially. Constantly entertained, but critically uninformed. That's the risk.
Okay, here's where it gets really profound, I think. If parents aren't building that critical thinking foundation at home, like we discussed with the parenting research, and then kids, especially Gen Z and Alpha, are hitting this online world full of hyperpolarized, superficial, emotionally charged stuff. It's a perfect storm, isn't it?
It absolutely is. A dangerous feedback loop.
It leads right back to judging leaders by their hairstyle. It makes total sense now in a scary way. Which brings us to the government's role. How on earth do they respond to this changing digital landscape, this flood of information, misinformation? How do they even try to maintain trust and accountability?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because governments themselves are drowning in digital challenges. It's not just about managing public information. They're struggling to manage their own information effectively.
Right. So let's talk about that. Governmental accountability in this digital age. Why is good record keeping so vital, and what are the actual struggles they're facing?
It's incredibly vital and often underestimated. Independent reviews, like ones done in Australia and New Zealand, really lay it bare. Good record keeping. It's not just bureaucracy. It's essential for public trust, for delivering services properly, for making sound decisions, for accountability, for transparency.
It's the government's memory, essentially.
Exactly. Without solid, verifiable records, how can anyone track decisions, understand past actions, ensure consistency? It's fundamental. And the consequences of getting it wrong are severe. We're not just talking inefficiency.
What kind of consequences?
Think about major inquiries like the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse. Poor records literally made it harder to identify victims, harder to identify perpetrators, and obstructed justice. Survivors couldn't get answers or accountability.
That's devastating.
It is. Or look at big government program failures. Reports often show a lack of written advice, poor records, meaning no one could figure out why decisions were made or who was responsible when things went wrong. Accountability just vanished. It even impacts basic human rights for vulnerable people, kids in care, prisoners if their interactions aren't documented properly.
So it affects real people deeply. If it's that critical, why isn't it treated as such? What are the cultural roadblocks inside government?
That's a huge part of the problem. Culturally, many government departments still see archives and records authorities as well, cultural agencies, focused on dusty old papers, history, not as core integrity agencies that are crucial for accountability right now.
An image problem.
A major one. It leads to complacency. Some senior officials might think, oh, archiving, that's just data backup. IT can handle it, which completely misses the point about information governance, preservation, context. And sometimes, sadly, there's just a culture of secrecy. Information management isn't seen as a core function, so it doesn't get prioritized. It doesn't get the investment. Its value is seen as long-term, indirect, not a quick win.
So it's misunderstood, underappreciated, and maybe sometimes conveniently ignored, which must mean it's under-resourced too.
Absolutely. Chronic under-resourcing. The archives authorities struggle to do their jobs, set standards, advise agencies, monitor compliance, provide proper storage, and the agencies themselves often lack the staff, the training, the systems to meet their own record-keeping duties. It leads to patchy compliance, insecure storage, gaps everywhere, like building a house on sand.
And then you throw digital transformation into the mix, which sounds like it should help, but maybe not always.
It's definitely a double-edged sword. Digital offers huge potential for efficiency, yes, but it brings massive new risks for information management. Take governance. There are big worries about skills, training, oversight. Who's responsible for digital records versus paper? Often it's unclear, fragmented between departments like IT, records, data teams. Leads to leadership gaps, skills gaps.
And real-world consequences.
Absolutely. An auditor general found hospital records were actually manipulated because of poor digital access controls and governance in emergency departments. Think about that. Compromised data integrity, potentially catastrophic patient safety issues.
Manipulated hospital records. That's terrifying, not just an admin issue.
Not at all. Then there's the creation of information. Digital makes it easy to create endless data, right? But does it create complete, accurate, reliable records for evidence? Often not. Systems like CRMs might not have proper records functions built in. Conversations, decisions, gone, unless someone manually prints and files them, which often doesn't happen.
So no official record exists.
Or you get multiple, slightly different digital copies floating around. Which one is the real one? It's a mess for accountability.
Quantity over quality and a broken audit trail. Nightmare. What about keeping this stuff long-term?
Storage and preservation is a massive challenge. Nearly 40% of authorities are deeply worried. Many digital systems just weren't built for long-term preservation. Agencies keep vital digital info in their regular business systems, which aren't designed for it. Only maybe 40% even have a strategy for long-term digital preservation.
So stuff just gets lost or becomes unreadable.
Huge risk of that. Technology obsolescence is real. Data from 10, 20 years ago might be totally inaccessible if it wasn't migrated, a potential digital dark age. And then there are cyber attacks.
Right, that must be a huge share.
Existential. Imagine hackers altering legal documents, deleting land titles, causing chaos, wiping out historical archives. It's not sci-fi, it's a real threat to societal memory and function.
The idea of losing national memory. That's profound.
It is. And even basic disposal is harder digitally. Paper took up space, cost money to store. That incentivized getting rid of stuff you didn't need. Digital storage is cheap and visible, so agencies just hoard everything. Makes finding the important stuff like finding a needle in a digital haystack.
More data isn't always better.
Not when it's unmanaged. And finally, access. Digital should make access easier, right? But around 40% of authorities say it's actually had an adverse impact. Why? Legacy systems, old email archives, databases create huge backlogs for review. Lack of interoperability, obsolete tech. It all hinders access. Information gets lost unless governments spend big money on recovery. There was a case in New Zealand. Records of a critical meeting. Inaccessible. Just vanished into the digital ether because they weren't migrated properly. No scrutiny possible.
So these aren't just tech issues. They're fundamental failures. Eroding trust, blocking accountability.
Absolutely, which is why archives authorities need to step up. They need to advocate forcefully for the value of information management, the risks of failure.
Yeah.
They need proper resources, independence, a central position in government, not sidelined as a cultural function. Maybe even centralizing digital storage and preservation makes sense for efficiency and security, rather than leaving it to every single agency. It's a fundamental rethink for the digital age.
That really paints a picture of the internal government struggle, which makes their attempts to regulate the external digital world even more interesting.
Yeah.
Against this backdrop of their own digital challenges and the changing media habits we talked about, we see this global push for safetyism laws, regulating online content. How are different countries trying to do this? Who are they targeting?
It's a huge ongoing experiment, and everyone's trying slightly different things. Countries like Australia, the EU, France, Germany, Ireland, Singapore, the UK, they're all in the game. And they're regulating a broad range of players: social media, cloud hosting, video sharing, online marketplaces, even search engines.
So pretty much the whole online ecosystem.
Yeah, but there's a key distinction. The bigger platforms usually face stricter rules. Think the EU's very large online platforms, VLOPs, with over 45 million users a month, or the UK's Category 1 high-risk companies. The logic is Bigger reach, bigger potential impact, some more responsibility.
Makes sense. Size matters.
Yeah.
But what kind of harm are they actually trying to regulate? Is it just illegal stuff?
That's where it gets really interesting and complicated. Everyone agrees platforms need to tackle illegal content. Terrorism, child exploitation material, inciting violence, that's the baseline. No debate there.
Okay.
The real divergence is over-regulating lawful but harmful content. This is the tricky zone. Things like disinformation campaigns, violent content that isn't technically illegal but is disturbing, maybe sexually explicit adult content, cyberbullying, promoting eating disorders, self-harm, suicide.
Stuff that's legal to post, but society might deem harmful.
Exactly, and different places draw the line differently. The UK, Ireland, and Singapore have proposed rules covering the broadest range of this lawful but harmful stuff. They're taking a more interventionist stance compared to others who might focus more tightly on just illegal content.
That sounds like a potential minefield, balancing free speech and protection.
It absolutely is. And it leads to different approaches, too. Are you focused on removing specific bad posts after the fact, or on making the whole system safer beforehand?
Reactive versus proactive.
Right. Germany, Australia, Singapore, they tend to be more content-focused, or ex-post. They demand quick takedowns once notified. Germany wants manifestly unlawful stuff down in 24 hours. Australia's talking 24 hours for cyberbullying images. It's like playing whack-a-mole with bad content. Simpler, but reactive.
Putting out fires.
Exactly. Whereas the EU, Ireland, the UK are leaning more towards a systems-focused ex-ante approach. They want platforms to build systems and processes to prevent harm in the first place. Risk assessments, mitigation measures.
Like designing safer buildings instead of just having better fire engines.
That's a great analogy. Advocates say it's more effective long-term because it tackles the root causes within the platform's design. It's more ambitious, though.
So different philosophies, but are there common requirements popping up everywhere? Things all platforms have to do now?
Yes, several common threads are emerging. Content removal or blocking is universal, even if the speed and triggers vary. User reporting mechanisms are common too, making it easy for users to flag harmful stuff. EU, France, Germany, Ireland, Australia require this.
Okay.
Many also require platforms to report certain content to authorities. France wants criminal offenses reported. Germany will require reporting threats and hate crimes to police. The EU suggests reporting serious threats to life or safety.
Getting law enforcement involved.
Yeah. Increasingly, yes. And transparency reporting is becoming mandatory, not optional. Platforms have to publish regular reports on their moderation policies, how many posts they took down, why. Germany wants biannual reports, UK annual for big players, EU VLOPs every 6 months, including risk assessments. It's about shining a light inside the black box.
More accountability.
That's the goal. And some places, like Germany, EU, UK, Ireland, require a designated person in charge of compliance locally. And here's a big one. The UK and Ireland have controversially proposed criminal sanctions for senior managers if they fail to provide information to regulators.
Wow, personal criminal liability. That really raises the stakes for executives.
It certainly does. It signals a move towards holding individuals accountable, not just hitting the company with fines.
Okay, so that's what they have to do. What about things people might think they should do but generally aren't required, like reading every post before it goes up?
Right. Pre-moderation is generally off the table. It's just seen as unworkable for platforms handling billions of posts. The EU's Digital Services Act even prohibits forcing platforms into general monitoring. It's impractical and raises censorship flags.
Makes sense. What about making everyone use their real name?
Mandatory real-world ID also hasn't been widely adopted. Big concerns there about excluding the billion-plus people globally without official ID, plus issues around immigration status, gender identity. It creates too many barriers. Inclusivity tends to win out over strict ID verification.
Got it. So if platforms, especially the huge ones, ignore these rules, what are the consequences? The teeth?
The consequences are getting serious. Most places, except the US really, have hefty financial penalties. Australia, up to 11 million AUD, or 10% of global turnover. EU, up to 6% global turnover. UK, up to 18 million GBP, or 10% global turnover. For a tech giant, that's billions.
That would get their attention.
Definitely. And then there's potential corporate or individual liability. Ireland allows corporate criminal charges, and as we said, UK and Ireland are proposing limited criminal liability for managers over info requests. And finally, the tool of last resort in several places is ISP blocking. Regulators could order internet providers to block access to a non-compliant platform in that country.
Cut them off entirely.
It's the nuclear option, but it's on the table.
So looking at all this,
Yeah.
the push for a safer internet is undeniable. But the approaches are complex, varied, sometimes contradictory. It's a massive global effort to regulate this space, balancing safety, speech, innovation. And it's constantly evolving.
A real tightrope walk.
Okay, we've covered a huge amount, from the family dinner table and how foundational that is, through the wild west of digital media consumption, especially for younger generations, and now into how governments are trying, internally and externally, to manage this digital age with record-keeping struggles and new safety laws. Let's try and tie these threads together. How do these pieces intersect and influence each other?
When you connect the dots, the picture becomes, well, quite stark, actually. That foundational lack of critical thinking skills from home, that parental disengagement we started with, leaves kids vulnerable, doesn't it?
Yeah, unprepared.
Totally unprepared for the wildly polarized and exaggerated online political content that Gen Z in particular swings in. How can they possibly sort truth from fiction, especially with sophisticated disinformation campaigns out there, if they haven't built that internal compass?
So sending them into a maze without any tools to find their way out.
Exactly. And then layer on the government side, that culture of secrecy, the poor record keeping, it corrodes public trust, right? If people can't trust the government's own information or can't hold leaders accountable because the records are a mess.
How can they teach their kids about civic responsibility or trust?
Precisely. It might even reinforce that parental indifference. If the system seems opaque or broken, why bother engaging or teaching your kids to engage? And while transparency reports from online platforms might fill some gaps, it's information coming from tech companies, not the core government institutions themselves. It's a fragmented picture of accountability.
So a lack of critical thinking skills meets a lack of governmental transparency. It's a recipe for cynicism or just tuning out, or maybe latching onto simplistic things like baldness.
Or being easily swayed by online narratives. Which brings us back to that safetyism legislation. It's a direct response, an attempt to protect people, especially kids, from the harms of this online world. Understandable.
But you called it a double-edged sword earlier.
Because it is. If this government policing of the internet feels too heavy-handed, too restrictive, especially to young people who value freedom and exploration, it could backfire.
How so?
It could push them to find ways around the restrictions. VPNs, other tools, trying to get past the roadblocks. And where might that lead them? Possibly to the dark web, or other truly unregulated, much more dangerous corners of the internet, far beyond any safety net.
Wow. So trying to build a safe, walled garden might inadvertently push them out into the actual wilderness?
That's the risk. It highlights this incredibly difficult balance. How do you protect people from harm without stifling their ability to learn, explore, and develop their own critical judgment? Too much safety might actually hinder the development of resilience.
It's a real dilemma.
And looking ahead, the challenges are huge. These global platforms face a patchwork of different rules everywhere. Compliance is complex. It might clash with other goals like competition or data privacy. And ultimately, regulation alone can't fix it. We desperately need better digital literacy education, empowering users, especially kids, to navigate this stuff critically themselves, to ask the right questions about what they see online.
So regulation is part of it, but education and critical thinking are fundamental.
Absolutely. The journey to a safer, more informed digital world, it's ongoing. It requires constant adaptation, not just laws.
We really have peeled back layers today. From those quiet dinner tables influencing lifelong views, to the noisy, often misleading digital squares, and the government's complex role in trying to manage it all. It's so clear the future of civic engagement isn't just about policies, it's about how we, collectively, equip the next generation for this complex information world.
Yeah, exactly. The challenge isn't just blocking bad stuff or telling parents how to parent. It's about fostering a society of discerning people who understand how information works, how it's made, stored, regulated, and why that matters. Even if it starts with something seemingly trivial like a politician's hairstyle, the underlying skill is crucial. It's about valuing truth, valuing accountability, not just surface impressions.
Building that internal framework, as you said. Okay, let's leave our listeners with this thought. Considering how fast this digital world changes, imagine a future where AI isn't just creating content, but maybe managing government records, maybe even monitoring online harms automatically. How could that fundamentally change everything we've talked about, truth, accountability, political understanding for the generations coming up? And crucially, what role would we have in shaping that future paradigm?